The South Center recently hosted a dialogue in Beijing on BRICS and reform of international financial architecture. Can you share with us what were the underlying issues that were discussed in that dialogue?
The main subject of the dialogue was connected with a major problem that developing countries face, and this is the dominance of the US dollar in transactions as a reserve currency. This is interesting because despite the fact that the weight of the US economy has fallen dramatically in the last 50 years, still the dollar is the dominant currency, in particular for financial transactions and for trade. And this brings a lot of problems to developing countries in the trade relations. And also it affects very much the countries that are subject to the so-called unilateral coercive measures, these measures that prevent them from trading and using the SWIFT system, for instance. Then the main subject was how to overcome these limitations imposed by the dominance of the dollar, which is not justified in terms of the economic presence or weight of the US economy. What alternatives do exist? It's not an easy subject because de-dollarization will not be fast or easy to make, but it's an important issue. There are some examples now of trading made on other currencies, in particular the yuan, but still more needs to be done in order to ensure that this is a process that will achieve at a certain point this objective of de-dollarization of the world economy.
What do you perceive as the major issues within the global financial architecture? We've talked about how it's outdated. We've talked about how developing countries want a bigger say in the international financial architecture, in international multilateral financial institutions. These are all part of the reforms that developing countries have been calling for. What are the biggest issues for you that need to be changed immediately?
Well, you just suggested this. So the Bretton Woods institutions are outdated. They do not take into account the realities of the world economy today, the weight of developing countries I mentioned before. So these institutions need to be reformed. There is resistance, however, to do this. So we need to work with IMF, the World Bank. And this is one of the most urgent and important issues for developing countries, has been this demand for the reform of the international financial architecture has been there for many years without any positive reaction on the side of the powerful countries. But this will come as well, because as I mentioned, the world economy has changed, and this change will be reflected at one point in this institution as well. So I think this is inevitable. It will happen. And we also need to address the problems of indebtedness of many countries, how to deal with this. So the agenda is broad, is important. It will not be easy to work on this, but I think progress will be made.
What role can the Global South and can groupings like BRICS play in reforming the international financial system? Because as of now, they have a smaller say in the system and in relevant international financial institutions. How can they get their voices heard, and how can they get actions on the ground for change?
Well, this is a process. So you're right. They need to increase the capacity to influence the decision in these organizations. Some steps have already been taken, but these are not sufficient. And therefore, process needs to continue in order to ensure that this actually happens. So we need a clear agenda. We need a roadmap to do this. And I think BRICS offers an opportunity to elaborate such an agenda. And there are other groupings that work, as you know, in the United Nations and elsewhere, such as the Group of 77 plus China, and also the NAM, the Non-Aligned Movement. All these groupings can actually help in order to develop an agenda and address these critical issues.